Still buzzing over this win over South Carolina, but which players announced themselves in the South Carolina game that we should be on the lookout come tournament time? You're locked on.
You are Locked On UConn, your daily podcast on the UConn Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Before we dive into today's show, we always take a moment to say how thankful we are for all of you, and we appreciate all of your support. We're proud to say we're the only daily podcast covering UConn men's and women's basketball, the hoops capital of the world, and we're thrilled to bring you the coverage you deserve. To show that gratitude, we're giving back. We're donating 10% of our revenue to Husky Ticket Project, helping send kids to UConn games. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook and official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Well, still buzzing over that win. We bring in Bella Tamano of Hoops Capital of the World and, of course, a co-host of mine on Locked On UConn. Bella, I have to ask you the first question off of the live show, and then a day has passed. We had Jen Rosati on the show, all of that. But before we get into anything else with the Big East schedule and everything going forward, which one player, in your opinion, announced themselves to the world in this UConn South Carolina game?
Listen, I think the obvious answer there is AZ Fudd. We talked about it last week, and we said, okay, like if we want to be an elite squad, AZ is going to have to play a bulk of the minutes and score a bulk of the points. And last night, she put everybody on high alert and said, listen, Paige is great, Sarah's great, but I'm still here. I'm still a part of that three-headed monster. And when I need to go after it and get some buckets, I'm going to do it. And last night, she did just that. I said this yesterday on the live show. When she got the ball, she knew exactly what she wanted to do and was just toying with the defense of South Carolina. She was shot faking and driving. Once she established that three-point shot, I mean, there was no way to guard her because they didn't know, okay, she was going to either shoot it down their throat or she was going to drive, dish it for an easy wide open layup or go to the hole and get one herself. And she did a great job. So that's the obvious answer. Now, Mark, for you, I'm going to kind of turn it around to you and say, who do you think was that other rising hero yesterday? Obviously, we know Paige didn't have her greatest stuff points-wise, but still was impactful and efficient. Who was the other X factor for the Huskies yesterday?
Oh, for me, I wouldn't even have. I mean, I appreciate the easy answer. I would have went Jana right away. Jana is always kind of been a key to this team because of how big she is, how skilled she is. I always harken back to the beginnings of camp when in the preseason when Gino would say, Jana's trying to make up for a year and a half of missing time with every play. And so it was always about how comfortable she would be and how quickly she could get going. Now, here we are, February 18th, when this show comes out. And, I think for some people, the patience level kind of ran thin on Jana. But when Ice got hurt and she was a little less effective, I think we were waiting for her to kind of take that step forward. And she definitely did Sunday against the Gamecocks because, look, and even, I'm not saying this because Gino said it, but it's plain to see. And then, of course, in his press conference, he said, Jana gave us some great minutes, and that's something that we can build on. I think you can always build off of, an AZ Fudd 28-point game. Of course, 6 of 10 from 3 and all that. But the key to this is going to be, I mean, if they play like a UCLA in the final or the Final Four, you got to have someone that kind of that's going to body Lauren Betts and some of these. And if they play USC again, Kiki Iriafen, right, is 6'4", and she really did work on UConn. And even Notre Dame, as much as the guards were a big problem, I can't think of her name, but the starting center off the top of my head, who's like 6'5", really thick gal. She's really big down low, a true space eater. So I think Jana is such a key to their kind of next step involvement. And that's why I would have picked her.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. And the other person I want to kind of tip my cap to is Ashlynn Shade. I think she had another great game. only had 9 points, and I mean I say only because obviously there were some bigger scorers on the day yesterday, but she hit shots at points when she needed to. And there was a clip, I think it was on the ESPN TikTok page, where they were like Dawn Staley's face after just an Ashlynn Shade dagger, and that's really the only way to look at it is there was no answer. Obviously, somebody like Dawn Staley has to prep for, Strong, Fudd, and Beckers. And I would say they did a good job against Beckers scoring wise. She only had 12 yesterday, but Ashlynn Shade was somebody that wasn't necessarily accounted for. She was making shots in big moments. And we talk about her being the Big East Freshman of the Year. Yes, it's one of those, stats where, one of those accolades where the competition isn't incredible in the Big East. But she's somebody that, listen, sleep on Ashlynn Shade, go right ahead, because she is going to she's going to make you pay for that. And I think yesterday we saw that firsthand.
Yeah, no doubt. And then I wanted to also talk about, because I think some people on Sunday in the chat were talking about how, Paige didn't have her best game. It's like, no, I don't think you really kind of like, when you watch that again, I watched some clips again this morning. Paige is so good at running the offense, and it's why I asked beat reporters at the beginning of the year. I haven't had a chance to ask Gino this question. Maybe I will someday. Why hasn't she been running point the whole time? Because she legitimately runs a beautiful offense. Like she administered probably 50 of their 87 points, and she only scored 12. So I mean, like, between the assist to AZ's pocket, I'm not talking to like she just like dumped a pass off. I'm talking about precision passes. I put out a video yesterday of me frustrated after the UConn men lost to Seton Hall. I went to the gym on Sunday and like shot baskets, and like I get on a nice run, and you can tell I'm a decent shooter. So I know what it's like when someone gives you a pass right here and it's right in your pocket, and you don't have to do anything other than just set your feet and shoot. And that's what AZ did in that game. But that's part because of how great those passes are. Nothing throws a shooter off than having to kind of get off their spot, right? So I think for me, that just doesn't get talked about enough, about how I know we all talk about the efficiency, and there's people who think that's overrated and all that stuff. That's fine, but she's never going to be. If she turns into Caitlin Clark, we're going to lose. Let's put it that way. Like, if she doesn't do what she's the best at, then that's the whole point is kind of moot.
Right. It didn't need to be her night last night, right? Sarah handled things and did a good job, and same thing with AZ, obviously. And we saw some other contributions, 10 from Caitlin Chen, which is great. But
Bella, I would argue that it was her night. Like, that's the thing. Like, I don't mean that to be contrarian. Like, I mean that, like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. No, I totally get what you're saying. And again, she did have 10 assists and did play a great game. I'm just saying, when we think of greatness and things like that, a lot of times we look at that point stat. So that's just kind of the thing I'm thinking. Typically we see her making those, bigger baskets and bigger moments. And that's what I mean by it wasn't her night, in the sense of, it's not that she had a bad game. It just wasn't
right.
She wasn't the shining star. I mean, if you talk about the stars of the game, it was AZ, Sarah, and then Paige. And that's fine. I don't care. It just has to be one of them three, and it doesn't matter the order. That's kind of the way I mean of her not being the exact star, which is totally fine. It's totally fine. I get what you're saying. I mean, she still had a great game. I don't want to take anything away from her in that regard. I just mean when we're talking in that points category.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no doubt. All right, we're going to take a quick break here from our friends at FanDuel, and then when we come back, let's talk about what this win against South Carolina means on the whole, whether that's, seeding wise, whether that's psychologically, what is this going to do for the Huskies going forward? We're going to talk about that coming up after the break. Looking to optimize your When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off and you want to bet on the fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting, whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player late to hit a clutch three. I never feel like I'm missing my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your one shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports book partner of the NFL.
All right, and we're back for the second segment, kind of coming off of it, who stepped up, who announced themselves, as we talked about. This was yesterday, I think, in my opinion, one of the best wins UConn has had in probably, I want to say, at least a 5-year stretch. You go into the South Carolina's building, you snap their 71 home game win streak, and it was just pure dominance, a pure textbook old school UConn victory. Now, obviously, you don't want to get too crazy, too much of a false sense of hope, just in case things don't pan out the same way in the tournament. But Mark, what does this mean? What does this mean for UConn? What does this really dominant victory over one of the best teams in the country mean for UConn?
I think it means that people like myself, more so me because I do this more than you, and people that are covering the team either as an opinionist or as a beat reporter probably should almost take a step back and be like, maybe I evaluated them poorly. And I say that because, I said this on the men's side. Sometimes you just have to listen to the coaches. And Gino has said it for the last few months. Our better players have to step up. Well, AZ's starting to step up on the shooting side. Our better players have to step up. Paige is being more of a vocal leader, really taking, the bull by the horn, so to speak, right? Sarah is doing what Sarah does all year. And I think also you need players like you mentioned Ashlynn Shade earlier, who was the Big East freshman of the year, to do the things that she did in the NCAA tournament last year. And then you get these contributions from Jana. They're starting to get healthy. So I think all of it ends up being kind of like a perfect storm where they now we can feel comfortable in, as they get into the NCAA tournament with whether it's a Sweet 16 game or an Elite 8 game where it's like, okay, this is a big time game. And I feel comfortable going into this game. I don't feel like, they haven't beaten anybody this year, so I don't really know what to expect. I mean, I don't know if they're going to beat everybody by 30 in the NCAA tournament, but I'd expect them to have that chip that they showed in that South Carolina game. One of my buddies on social media, and we text often about both the men and the women. He sent me a message and was just like, "Is it me or did they just look so much faster than South Carolina in that game?" And the answer to that question obviously is yes, which is not what we expected. We expected them to shoot the ball well, which they did, and they had to stay in the game, but then they just blew their doors off. So that to me was the biggest shock. So all of us who were like, they're not as athletic as South Carolina, honestly just need to shut up. Just be honest a bit on it. Like they clearly are. They clearly shoved it in our faces. And I hope that, I don't think I have that much reach, but I hope that gave them some motivation to be like, some people really were doubting us and they probably didn't feel like that in the past. I don't know about you.
No, I do agree on that. I feel like sometimes playing from that underdog kind of standpoint, it lights a fire under you. And I think that's exactly kind of what happened yesterday. I was I don't want to say an AZ Fudd hater, but I was somebody, coming out of that St. John's game when she has 34. I was talking to everyone. I said, I don't care about what she does against St. John's. I seriously need to see this against a good opponent. And finally, yesterday, we saw it. Now, the one thing I'll say for UConn is we're still 1-3 in big, significant, significant contests, right? We lost.
I would say this though, Bella. I don't mean to cut you off, but I would say that if we're gonna be like really fair, and a loss is a loss. You don't, just because you have injured players doesn't matter. But if you like think about the USC game, you lose a close game, right? where you were down pretty much the whole game and come back. The Notre Dame game, you didn't have AZ, and Ashlynn played like crap. Sarah was in foul trouble, whatever, right? And then, so to me, it's really just, if we're being honest, like when they've been full strength, they're 1-1. And also you can throw North Carolina in there, so you could probably say they're 2-1 because North Carolina's gonna be in the top 10. But I don't think anyone really thinks that North Carolina and Tennessee have a chance to win the national championship. That's why this South Carolina win is so much bigger, because it's not like, and USC and Notre Dame certainly do. So if you want to be fair, like they're 1-0 against big time competition. They're 1-0 against teams that are kind of like 1-1 against teams on like the rise, and 0-2 when they were diminished against Notre Dame and USC. That's the way I would kind of break it down, just to be fair.
No, I think you're right. I think at full strength, this definitely gives us, and honestly, kind of shows the whole country that we can compete with any team on any given night. Now, I think the other thing is, we talk about recruiting, and just want to touch on this a little bit. We talked about this yesterday in the live show, and I know, we can probably go a little more in depth right now, but Agat McCord, are probably top 2 schools. Obviously, I know she had it down to Michigan State, UConn, and South Carolina, but I think it's probably realistically between UConn and South Carolina. Do you think that win yesterday could be a statement for her? And how much do you think that'll kind of increase their chances of recruiting in the future, that game yesterday? Again, it's only one game, but just a little silly topic to kind of talk about.
I think that's a little overblown, but I definitely think there's got to be some goodwill you have with recruits when you can take down essentially the reigning national champions, and you're in the mix for a championship yourself, and you've won many in the past. I think we talked about this kind of on Sunday, and if you remember when South Carolina beat UConn last year, and it was Sarah, and Sarah Strong was going to pick between South Carolina and UConn. The South Carolina fans started chanting in the fourth quarter, up 15, "We want Sarah." And so I think that, to me, tells you everything you need to know about Sarah Strong. She was like, "Oh, okay, cool. Well, I'm going to go to UConn." I think, but I don't know. I don't really know Agat McCord. I don't know if she's would be swayed by something like that. I don't think she would be. I also think it's not to kind of like talk down to the younger generation, but I also think, because I was a knucklehead when I was 19 years old, like I don't know. I didn't probably know exactly what I wanted to do or go if I was in their position. So I think anything can happen. I think if UConn wins a national championship, maybe she goes, "Wow, that's pretty cool. I would love to play with Sarah and start winning some championships." If they lose early, I think it hurts. I think you can go either way. I think it's kind of like it's a cool topic, but I think it's a topic that has no wrong answer. So you could just kind of go around in circles all day about it.
Very true. Very true. Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. Well, hopefully, regardless of yesterday's win, hopefully Agat McCord is swaying, kind
she
of.
She certainly would.
UConn, but.
Yeah, certainly she would look good with Blanca Quinones and Sarah and Gandy. Like, how big and fast and strong would this team be if you put Agat in there? Because she kind of is like Joyce Edwards. Like, she's not, I don't think she's as polished offensively, but she's a great defender. She'd be the type of player that's like raw that Gina would like. I don't think she comes in as good as Sarah, kind of as efficient, but she's also not the number 1 recruit in the country. She's number 4. I mean, that's not that big a deal, but it would just be a really interesting dynamic to see her. I don't know how she would be used, but I know she'd probably get run like right away. And at South Carolina, she probably doesn't, because they have a ton of talent kind of waiting on the bench. So I don't know. That could be a factor as well. I mean, that's that. And I think the NIL opportunities at UConn are bigger. Like, just being honest, like going through, the Page era and the AZ era and all that. I think people are going to be falling all over themselves to get a piece of Sarah and anybody else that, comes through UConn, especially. I think really it'll be determined by which team does better in the tournament. I know that sounds silly, but I think that could be a factor.
Yeah, I definitely think so. And I think to your point, I mean, you said a guy will add so much more athleticism to UConn, and you already said that, yesterday UConn looked more athletic than South Carolina. So that in and of itself is
It's
a
wild.
scary. It could be a scary sight. If Agavencourt, goes to UConn. I think I'd say a month ago I was basically kind of set on the idea. You know what, we're not going to get her, but I think yesterday at least made me feel okay. Maybe we got a chance. We still got it. Gino's still sharp. So maybe we'll sway her last second. We'll see.
It's definitely possible. Before we get to the next segment, what do you think about like the seeding aspect? We talked about this a little bit on Sunday too. What scenario do you think could happen where UConn gets a number 1 seed?
I think right now it is out of their control because we're gonna win out. I would say we only have Big East games left and the Big East tournament. So at this point, UConn is just gonna run the table, and I think it's just gonna have to come down to a couple teams in that top 4 losing. South Carolina is, I would say, kind of on that bubble right now. Texas just got a quality win against, obviously, South Carolina, and then they beat LSU yesterday. So I would say I think South Carolina could be that team to slip out because I think USC and UCLA are going to kind of notch those 1 and 2 spots, obviously in that AP and Ken Palm ranking, everything like that. I think Notre Dame's going to be the 3 seed, and I think Texas. I think that last 4 slots going to go to either Texas or South Carolina. Would you have to agree with that, Mark? Or kind of
Yeah, so I disagree a little bit on the order, but I think with UCLA's loss, they dropped to like the second. I think because they've had big wins, I think they dropped to the second overall seed. I think Notre Dame is the number 1 overall seed right now. I think I would go UCLA 2, Texas 1, and I think USC could overtake South Carolina as the 4th number 1. I think it's going to be, as I looked at it, I said it on Sunday that UConn could slide in the back door. It could happen if a team like South Carolina loses another game, or Texas or USC. I don't know. I think with the weak competition, I think they stay at 2. They may be the fifth best team, so they may get the 5th overall seed, if you will, the 5th number 1 or the 1st number 2, however you want to look at it.
Right.
But I just don't see them getting the 1 seed. I think it's like a 20% possibility. When you look at bracketology before the UConn game on Sunday, there were like 6 teams really have a chance, and they're not mentioning UConn in it. You're talking about USC, Notre Dame, South Carolina, Texas, UCLA, those 6. So the fact that South Carolina lost, okay, but they lost to a 2 seed. They didn't lose to a 10 seed. So that's not going to hurt them as much. It's a great win for UConn. It's not a bad loss for South Carolina. I know they lost by 30, so maybe that makes a difference. But I don't know how the metrics work on the net rankings on the women's side. I don't know if it's the exact same. It just seems like a more of a win for UConn in the sense that they know now that they can compete with everybody.
Yeah, I think yesterday was a confidence win. Obviously, it's a resume win, but I think internally it feels better than it does. It doesn't really matter, in my opinion, what seed we are. And I said the same thing in the live show. I like being that underdog. I want to come from behind and shock people because UConn's been on top for so long. And it's fine that they're not in that top spot anymore, but yesterday kind of brought back that hope and confidence in this team to make a run in the tournament. And I think they can do that.
All right, real quick, we're going to go take a quick break. No ads, so we'll be right back. And we're going to talk about the ceiling and the floor when it comes to seeding, when it comes to where this team can go. I think we both are probably in agreement that national championship is possible, but I'm curious where the floor may be because as we've seen, this team can have a Jekyll and Hyde nature to it, and we're going to talk about that coming up after the break. All right, we're back on Locked On UConn. Your host Mark Zanetto here with Bella Tamano. Last segment of the program. All right, Bella. We just talked about probably not the biggest chance to be a 1 seed. So I think the ceiling is a backdoor 1 seed if a couple teams lose. I think the 2 is more likely. But when it comes to this team's ceiling, national championship, you think is the ceiling, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we showed it yesterday on college game day, everything that UConn can compete.
And where do you think the floor is? Because I agree with you there.
All right, so I selfishly, obviously, I think everyone obviously wants them to make it to the Final Four, everything to the finals, win it. I was selected to go and cover UConn for the Sweet 16, Elite 8, Final Four, and Finals, obviously pending they get there. So obviously, I'm hoping and praying they make it to the Sweet 16, which I think is a no-brainer. I think the floor is the Elite 8. I think that's the floor in my opinion, because the first 2 rounds are going to be in stores. That's, I would say, almost a lock, if not already a lock. They have been the past couple years, and they're projected to be regardless of what region they end up in. So I don't see them losing a first or second round game at home. And I just think there's no way. I think with the crowd, with the opponents they're playing, I'd be shocked. I would be literally in shock. I think right now, I just don't see anybody in that first or second round beating us. And
No.
same thing with the Sweet 16. The Elite 8 gets a little bit tricky because they had us playing potentially Notre Dame in one of the draws that we had in that Elite 8 slot. They had us playing South Carolina once again, and it's hard to beat a team twice in a season, especially after you dominated them.
Right.
And with Dawn Staley having some time to make adjustments. Obviously, she wasn't able to do so yesterday, but I do think that Elite 8, getting past that Elite 8, could be tricky. I don't know. Would you have to agree or disagree on that one?
The only thing I would disagree on is if they get a bad bracket, like meaning the depth of talent is bigger in Birmingham, Spokane, or if they're in well, that's all of them. If they're like in Region 3 or Region 1 or whatever. Right now, hasn't been updated yet. But if you look at the Birmingham Region 2 region, UConn is the 2 seed, South Carolina is the 1. I could see them losing to North Carolina. North Carolina gave them fits in the second and third quarters, like the middle part of the game, the end of the first half, and then the end of the third quarter going to the fourth, where they cut the lead to under 10 and missed a couple of golden opportunities to cut the lead further. And that was when UConn was in a situation where they were kind of didn't really know what they had with certain players, and AZ wasn't there, so I could see that, but I think that would be it would be a bad loss, right? Because you have AZ back and Sarah's playing well. I don't see that, but it's possible. So I think that's the only, if we're just being like ceiling floor. Ceiling is national championship. Obviously, they proved that yesterday. I think even if they lost yesterday, I think the ceiling still would have been national championship or Final Four. But I can see a Sweet 16 situation where whether it be North Carolina or it could be a TCU, if LSU drops to a 3 seed, if they lose a few games, same thing. Like where I could see UConn losing as a 2 to a 3 seed in the Sweet 16 is if like one of the 2 seeds drops to a 3 because they like Duke or something like that, where they're not like underseeded, but it's it goes by the metrics, and sometimes that happens in the NCAA tournament where you just get a really crap draw and you kind of let the chips fall where they may. But I think it's like it's more like 75-25. The Elite 8 is the floor, which is pretty damn good. Especially for where we're at in women's college basketball. But I think always the goal is Final Four or bust, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon.
No, I agree. The only reason I don't see them like having that much trouble with like a North Carolina team like that is, I know I talk about it's tough to beat. I literally just said that it was tough to beat a team twice in the same year. Just because, there's adjustments. And I think that stat goes a little bit more for football sometimes, or for some other sports. But Gino, now with everybody healthy and knowing, okay, where did North Carolina cause us trouble and how can we neutralize that?
Sure.
I just don't see Gino allowing us to have that kind of
I agree.
That
I
them
agree with that.
having, have fits against them like we did.
I only thing I would say to you is I think Courtney Bankhart's a really good coach, and she's had a full season. They've gotten better as the year goes on.
Yeah,
they could end up being a 2 seed, so it could be a moot point because I think they just beat NC State. They're ranked 11th. I think they're going to get into the top 10 after this. So depending on what the AP does, who cares? But one game situation, and you get hot, and you have a shooting game like you had against Tennessee, and what if Tennessee's a 3 seed? You got to face them again.
That does scare me. Because I think that was a game where they just. I know it was close, but I just felt like they outclassed us. They outplayed us, especially in certain stints of that game. Then that is the thing. I mean, UConn yesterday, they shot almost 50% from 3. They made all but one free throw. They were super clean with the basketball. And, they were flying on defense. They weren't letting South Carolina breathe. No easy buckets yesterday. So I could see a possibility where we do have some trouble. But I would just have to say, I think I don't see that trouble coming until the Elite Eight. I could be wrong. But I think, first and second round's easy. Sweet 16. I hope the Sweet 16 gives us a little bit of trouble. Obviously, I hope we win. I hope it gives us a little bit of trouble because I want us to face a little bit of adversity earlier rather than later in the tournament. Just because, we don't play any tough teams from here on out, besides potentially that Sweet 16 or Elite 8 matchup. And sometimes, you want to see, you want to have a little bit of a test before, or a quiz before the test, if you will.
I like it. All right. This has been another episode of Locked On UConn. Bella, I appreciate you as always. We'll be back here. I'll actually be, when this comes out, I'll be traveling to Hartford for the UConn men versus Villanova. So if you see me in town, make sure you say what's up to me. I'm Mark Zanetto for Locked On UConn. We ask you to stay locked on, stay connected. Make sure you reach out to us on socials. But we wanted to let you know it's not about getting it done. It's about doing it in a way that it can't be done any better. As always, we say go Huskies.